Hey friends, we're out of my niche, if you will, to talk about a Paramount Plus original show that is on Netflix for some reason. I don't know why. I'm not going to look into it because I don't care. What's important is that it's on Netflix now, which is how I could see it, because I'm not paying for Paramount Plus. What do I look like to you? It's not important why it's on Netflix or who made it. I don't care. What's important is that right now I'm going to talk to you about it and what I thought about it, because that's all that matters. I'm assuming you clicked on this video thinking my opinion is the most important one, so I'm just going to run with that assumption. By the way, my camera's down here, my viewfinder's up here, and my script is right here. So if it looks like I'm not looking at you, it's because I'm not. I'm looking at me. No, I'm looking at my script, but I'm also looking at me to keep track of what's in frame. Beforehand though, I'm going to issue a quick trigger warning for both the show and this video. I'll try not to spoil anything by doing this, but this show, and therefore this video, includes stories about teenagers losing their life at school. These individual stories are not really shown to the audience, especially not in great detail. They're just told to us by the characters, and the details given are more about the surrounding circumstances and events rather than the deaths themselves, but nonetheless, their causes of deaths are made clear. There's not much violence or blood in the show at all. The most we see is a physical fight between two male characters. It's barely a fight, it's like a little tussle. I mean, it's whatever. Some blood splatter on a wall, blood dripping from the wall onto a character's forehead, temple, whatever you want to say, and a head injury suffered by another character that has a bit of blood, like in their hair. Hopefully that's a vague but detailed enough list to help you decide whether this show is something you'd be comfortable watching. It's okay if it's not. It's okay if that sounds like too much for you. It's okay if that sounds like even too much to watch this video. Everybody has their own tolerance levels for violence, and nobody clicks on a YouTube video to try to, like, push the boundaries of their own comfort zone. It's okay if that's not comfortable for you. So before I do the actual recap and a more thorough review, I'd like to give a brief non-spoilery review of the show in case you clicked on this video wondering whether or not you'd like to watch it yourself without knowing too much. School Spirits is relatively new, and I highly recommend you go in as blind as you can. I really enjoyed it. If you're interested, watch it. I'm serious, I really loved it. If you like mysteries especially, go watch it. As I said in the title and some parts of the script later on, this show is like if 13 Reasons Why wasn't awful. Obviously not in terms of like themes of mental health awareness, even though that show didn't do a very good job, but that's what its goal was, I think. I don't know. Its goal was to shock, if anything. Anyways, there's nothing so extreme in School Spirits as, like, characters taking their own lives, or at least not so far, but it's got a lot of similar storytelling tools, if that makes sense. The female main character dies before the events of the show, and her ghost seems to follow her real-life male best friend around as the secrets of their peers are dug up over the course of this unfolding mystery. Now, 13 Reasons Why isn't a mystery unless the question is, whose idea was this? And the answer is, we don't know, because no real person, no sane person would come up with a show like that and just let it go for 4 seasons? 5? I don't know. Unlike a lot of similar teen shows, School Spirits has what I would call good writing. Many TV shows about teenagers in high school have this issue where the characters either talk way too much like adults or they talk way too much like adults trying to talk like teenagers. Here, the teenagers just sound like teenagers. So much of the dialogue flows naturally, and the exposition that we get from the dialogue is really natural and it feels like a real conversation, while also informing the audience about things that only the characters are privy to at this point. The mystery is gripping. The pacing of the episodes is really good in the way that the information is revealed. It doesn't feel like it's stretched out for the sake of the story being longer. All the things that we see and learn throughout the episodes are important. And as I rewatched to make this video, I noticed more and more new details and things that just made things make more sense and changed how I viewed certain story elements. I cannot recommend this show enough. Honestly, if you are even remotely interested in watching it based on what I've said so far, go ahead and watch it and come back to this video and watch it all the way through 40 times and then leave a comment telling me that my eyeliner looks good today. Kidding. Not about the eyeliner though. It does look good today, doesn't it? And I wrote that before I even did my eyeliner because I just knew it would look good because it always looks good. I think that this video will be a fun way to further engage with the show and maybe get people to watch it and talk to me about it. But if you don't like watching recaps of shows you just watched, that's okay. You should still watch this video all the way through. Kidding. Well, maybe not. You should watch this video. Hopefully. That's your non-spoiler review section. Again, I recommend you watch it. If you've already seen it or have no interest in watching it by yourself, then go ahead and watch the rest of this video. So, the way I've structured this section of the video goes like this. I'll go through the story beats of the episode and then some commentary both from my initial watch and a few thoughts I had as I rewatched for this script. I may also have commentary intermixed with the recaps. Why the disorganization? I don't know. It's my video. Deal with it. Pull the plug in September. first episode in a high school gym, what looks like just one grade of students because it's a very small group and I doubt this school's that small, gathered for an assembly. A mustachioed teacher, whose name I never learned, speaks anxiously, nervously. I believe that this is not the very start of this assembly, but the tail end of it. He says,
"The Split River Police are considering this a missing person investigation."
Anyways, the purpose of this assembly is to inform the senior class about what is currently known concerning the disappearance of one of their peers, a girl named Madison Nears. Speaking of Near, Madison, or Maddie, is actually right here, in the gym, watching this assembly from the top bleacher area. As the cheerleaders give what I can only describe as an incredibly tone-deaf, Maddie is missing performance of their routine, we focus in on Maddie as she sits at the top of the gym with a concerned, shocked, and perhaps angry expression on her face. As Maddie reacts to the assembly, a young man approaches her and reminds her she's dead, and that they can't see or hear her. We cut to them walking down the halls as she speculates aloud that she might not actually be dead. The young man assures her that she's definitely dead. He tells her she'll feel better if she joins a group. This group being like 10 also dead teenagers and a teacher who sit in the basketball court and talk about something, I don't know. This teacher is named Mr. Martin, and only some of these ghosts will be important, these being Rhonda, a standoffish girl who always has a sucker in her mouth, Charlie, the one who led Maddie to the group, and well, I have a confession to make. One of the reasons I decided to watch this show is because Milo Manheim is in it, and I think he's cute. I think it's Manheim. Mannheim? I'm not gonna Google it. I don't care enough. Anyways, I think he's really cute. His character's name is Wally, a jock who wears classic jock clothes and his classic golden retriever energy. We only learn the name of one other group member, but we don't see her. Janet, quote, crossed over before the events of the show. We don't learn too much about her beyond that she was a big fan of the group, very into the teamwork stuff, I guess. Throughout this scene, Charlie gently encourages Maddie to open up to the group and to Mr. Martin, and I hope it's clear to you through my recap that Charlie's prodding comes from a very genuine place and that he's very sweet, and I don't want you to think that he's like a pushy character. He is, but in a good way. He's a good person. Okay, I like Charlie, and you should too. Here in this group scene, we learn a few things. 1, Maddie doesn't remember how she died, and 2, that she was murdered.
1 minute I was ditching study hall, and then the next, I'm here. But I don't know who did this to me.
Oh, you were murdered.
Welcome to the club.
That may seem contradictory, but Maddie's lack of memory implies a trauma that is being blocked out by her mind. And 3, she's the only one who doesn't remember how she died. Everybody else does.
Is that weird or something? Not knowing?
Well, it's a first.
We cut to a flashback where Maddie was alive, presumably on the day she died because she's wearing the same outfit. We see her with her boyfriend, the shifty blue-eyed guy that we first saw in the assembly. That's Xavier. She then catches up with and walks into school with her friend Simon, whom we also met at the assembly. They like to talk about horror movies together, I guess. Simon goes on some rant about a Carrie reboot, which is so real because I, too, could talk about the Carrie franchise all day. Maddie mentions her mom is going to some 2-week rehab program, during which time she'll have the house to herself. Simon jokingly suggests that they, quote, throw a sick party with all of their friends as their friend Nicole approaches, this being the girl sitting next to Simon at the assembly.
Should we throw a sick party and invite all of our friends?
We're throwing a party?
Nicole, you want to come to a party?
Sure.
Okay, I invite all our friends.
It's gonna be a rager.
Nicole says she had a portfolio review for some art schools in Chicago, and she says it went really well. Simon and Maddie plan on going to Northwestern together, and Nicole wants to go to an art school in Chicago so that they can all be together in college, and they celebrate because they're best friends, and I think that's really sweet. Once Maddie and Simon are in class, she sees Xavier through the classroom window in the parking lot, and she goes down to the parking lot in the middle of class, because her teacher's cool with that, I guess, and she fusses at him about vaping and skipping classes or whatever.
What are you doing out of class?
I came out to ask you the same question.
I'm skipping gym. Phone was totally dead. Came out here to charge it in peace, but now I can't find my charger.
I told you those things will kill you.
You know, you don't have to lie to me.
Total burnout who was skipping class to get high in his car.
For the record, you're the worst liar in the world.
Maybe you're just the best detective.
I will leave you to squander your future in peace.
Give up the drugs, Xavier. You know, I need you to stay out of juvie at least until homecoming. I don't want to skip it alone.
Moments later, she realizes he was lying about his phone being dead, and then hers dies. But not before getting a text notification from Xavier. We cut to Xavier in the car, who suddenly seems very concerned about whatever he sees on his phone. Maddie does not read the text because her phone dies before she can even open it. We meet Dawn next. She's another spirit teenager who doesn't join the group.
What happened there?
Oh, no clue. No, but it was the 70s, so, bad acid, cult initiation gone wrong. Probably drank the wrong Kool-Aid.
We're also shown the Band Kids, a group of 6 victims who died from a bus crash after a competition, who march in circles at all times playing When the Saints Come Marching In. Also, here we learn about the way that the spirits can interact with the real world. They can touch, but they can't change things. We'll come back to this later. Simon is in class, and he gets a little heated about, the lack of action from the other students. Xavier not signing up for the search party.
Shouldn't your name be first on the list, Xavier?
Simon.
And in this scuffle, Maddie's phone comes flying out of Xavier's backpack.
Why do you have Maddie's phone?
Why indeed? After this, we cut to a scene with Charlie and Maddie hanging out. Don't make me explain why they're in the boys' showers. I really don't want to. We learn that Charlie died from an anaphylactic shock. They fried the French fries in peanut oil that day, and he died in the lunchroom, which is really sad. Also, why did they... That's really, irresponsible. Why would they do that? Anyways, Maddie realizes she's missing some things and flashes back to study hall the day she died, seeing her mother drive up on the curb through the classroom window and rushing down to meet her and ask her what the hell she's doing. When this flashback ends, she realizes that she's missing her necklace. Simon and Xavier get in a fight, and this only serves to reinforce Simon's belief that Xavier has something to do with Maddie's disappearance. At this point, they don't know that she's dead. They just think she's disappeared.
I need you to force a confession out of someone. Rattle some chains, inhabit his body, scare the life out of him, whatever it takes. I need you to channel all your ghostly energy and dangle the sack of shit out of a window until he cracks.
Okay, you're not getting it. That's not how this works. Okay, it's not like in the movies. We couldn't do that even if we wanted to.
And I do want to.
King. Soon after, Maddie gets fed up with everything, really, and tries to run off campus and only ends up in the boiler room at the bottom of the school. Dawn explains that the spirits can't leave, they're confined to the boundaries of the school grounds.
It's kind of weird at first, but after the third or fourth try, you get used to it. Fifth try, it starts to hurt.
I think I'm gonna lose my mind.
Sounds fun.
Maddie inspects the blood splatter on the pipes of the boiler room and begins to recall a vague memory of her last moments alive. She comes back to the group and overhears Rhonda talking about how she died. She was murdered by her guidance counselor. Mr. Martin again insists on a moving forward mentality rather than focusing on their deaths. The basketball court begins to fill with students and faculty attending Maddie's memorial.
Vigil. No body, no burial.
Fine. Vigil. And Maddie expresses shock at her mother even turning up.
I can't believe she's here.
Sandra, Maddie's mom, turned to alcoholism after Maddie's dad died, and she was just a garbage mother every single day after that. That's so cool. I'll get into that more later. During the vigil, the sheriff pulls Xavier aside and questions him, and Xavier tells the sheriff that he was cheating on Maddie and he was trying to delete a text off of Maddie's phone that was meant for Claire. That's the cheerleader who's been acting suspicious this entire episode.
But instead, that text goes to Maddie. I stole Maddie's phone in study hall so I could delete that text. I didn't know she wasn't coming back, Dad.
Dad? Yes, Dad. Xavier's dad is the sheriff. Anyways, this is why Xavier has Maddie's phone. While he and Nicole are on the way to join the search party to look for Maddie, Simon stops back at the classroom he had that outburst in earlier to apologize to his teacher and collect his thoughts, and again asserts that Maddie would not just disappear.
I've known Maddie longer than almost anyone else in my life. She's a lot of things, but she isn't a person who runs. And if she was ever going to, I would be the first person to know. I know Maddie. Something happened to her. She wouldn't just disappear.
Moments later, as Simon looks out the window, Maddie stands next to him.
Thank you, Simon.
Maddie.
Simon?
And who could have predicted that? Me. But it was built up really well. I was expecting it. I mean, this isn't tea, it's pho broth. So now for some thoughts I had on this episode. Here's a real example of what I meant when I said that the characters sound like teenagers. That scene where Maddie and Simon were talking about Carrie.
New statement do you get from the reboot? Feminism? It's a story about an underdog loser who gets covered in loads of pig blood and then burns everyone who crossed her to death at the prom. It's inherently feminist.
So you hate women?
It's just so real. Like, when you have male friends, it's so funny to just accuse them of hating women. Like, it's not an actual accusation. It's just like a funny thing to say. Like, it's just funny. Peyton List, I know, has her roots in the Disney Channel, specifically with Jessie, and I really just think she has come a long way in terms of acting and separating herself from that so she can, have an independent career without you looking at her and saying that's the girl from Jessie. And I'm sure a lot of people still do, but I think she does a really good job. There was not a single speck of a moment in this show where I thought, God, this is a bit Disney acting. And the same thing goes for Milo. And I said this when I made my first zombies video. I think that Milo is an exceptional actor. And I think even for like a decom, he was able to separate himself from classic Disney Channel original movie acting styles by making the character his own. And I don't really think he ever came off too much like a Disney Channel original movie character. I just think he came off as like a Zed. You know what I mean? Like, I said it there and I'll say it again. He makes these characters his own. And I really like that, and I really respect that about him and his acting. I also think he's cute. Milo, call me. So I really like how the spirit dimension, the ghost world or whatever, is fleshed out, like rules-wise. A lot of questions are answered really well and naturally, with Maddie trying to tear down the defaced missing poster on a locker, and Charlie says this.
You can touch it, but you're never going to change anything in their world.
That's depressing.
And with this bit about how the dead teens can't escape school grounds, that's done naturally. Like, it's escalated to properly, the way she runs off and somebody tells her that she can't. She does it a few times. I also had a question about this because I found this confusing. Why does Maddie respawn in the boiler room? Specifically, do the other ghosts respawn in the boiler room? We never see anybody but her try to leave the campus. Either that's unique to her and the boiler room is unique to her and her death, or that's the bottom of the school, and therefore it's like some sort of reset point in the school. Based on the fact that the boiler room is really central to a lot of this story, I'm going to assume that it's important to Maddie's death. It's interesting how they don't bring up that question. They just let it be there and nobody says anything. But like, it's got to be important, and her blood's down there too. So I guess, you know. Also, on the note of the band kids, as we know, I was in marching band in high school. Even a dead band kid wouldn't rehearse in a full show uniform, and I don't fully get why they're going in circles. I guess that's more of a metaphorical thing, as Charlie says. Also, if they were coming back from a competition and they were in the bus, they most definitely wouldn't have had their full uniforms on. Every band is different, but they most likely would have had their bibbers and marching shoes on. And most likely were not wearing their uniform jackets, hat, or gloves on the bus, although they probably would have had those things with them, so it makes sense that they'd have access to them as ghosts and they probably put them on. I don't know. These band kids all have instruments, by the way, that would have been packed in a separate trailer, not on the bus with them, so I don't think that they'd have access to them after dying unless they stole them from the band room, but I have to wonder whether I'm supposed to assume that they did much of anything after they died other than play this song and march in circles. The only instruments a student might have with them on the bus, on their body with them, are piccolos, flutes, and maybe clarinets, none of which are present. Also, I don't know much about other schools because, you know, I only went to one, but we didn't really get to carry our plumes with us on the bus, so I don't know where they got these either. In fact, outside of a performance, I could not tell you where those things were kept. Before every full uniform performance, we'd be handed a plume and a set of gauntlets by a parent, volunteer, helper person, but those things went right back into boxes when we got done. I couldn't even tell you where they were. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. They were somewhere with somebody else and it wasn't my business, so I didn't care. I don't know where these ghosts got their plumes from or why any band kid would be rehearsing in this full uniform, especially with a plume on. I cannot imagine putting on a plume except to go, like, perform. Nobody does that. I understand why shows do this. It's recognizable as a marching band uniform, and the goal is to telegraph information to the audience as clearly as possible in these cases, but it's not going to stop me from being overly nitpicky, and it really annoys me. Xavier's performance is really reminiscent of Christian Slater's JD from Heathers. No further commentary on that, honestly. I just couldn't shake that vibe every single time he was on screen. He's not like him in terms of personality. It's just that he's like... He's just like that. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, the unsettlingly blue eyes and the black hair. Seeing her friends and mother grieve, I mean... We've been here with Maddie this entire time, yet her loss seems to still hang so heavy over the show and over the people that knew and loved her. And I think that that's really well done, because it's hard to make me feel like I miss a character that is not really dead to me as a viewer. I found myself really moved by this scene with Simon at the end of the episode. When I first watched it, I was already emotional for unrelated reasons, but Simon's scene in this classroom at the end, I mean, I cried with him. How could you survive without someone you spent so much of your life with, that you loved so much? And on Maddie's end, how could you watch your best friend grieve you like this? I feel like it's crushing on either side, and it's really sad, and that's really interesting for the story. Pull the plug, make it painless. I don't want a violent end. Don't say that you'll always love me, 'cause you know I bleed myself dry for you over and over again. So Simon can now see and hear Maddie, not any of the other ghosts though. Charlie is visibly freaked out by this phenomenon. He tells Maddie she probably shouldn't tell anybody else, that they'd probably try to use her as some sort of messenger service. Xavier's dad insists that he stay home from school, but he wants to go to school because
If I stay home, I'm playing into this whole Hannibal Lecter crap. Okay, they saw you take me away in the police car. They think I'm some kind of sociopath that needs to be caged.
Meanwhile, he ignores phone calls from who I assume to be Claire. Mr. Martin tells Maddie that she should write an obituary for herself as an exercise. He's insistent, which I found odd because there's no, time limit on that. There's infinite time for her to do that. I don't know why he thinks that she needs to do this right now. It's okay if it takes a few weeks. That's weird. Maddie expresses her concern for her mother as she spent a lot of time taking care of the woman and now feels like she has to take care of her even when she's dead, which is crazy because that's your mother and you're a teenager and you shouldn't have had to ever take care of your mother as a teenager. We cut to the teacher's lounge where Mr. Anderson, Maddie's English teacher, tells the other teachers he can't bring himself to grade Maddie's last paper. Don't forget him. He's important. In the cafeteria, Simon can suddenly see and hear Maddie again, so he runs off to speak to her. He asks her how she got out of the boiler room in the first place, and we flash back to her lying on the floor with blood dripping down on her temple. We cut back to Xavier's house, where he and Claire have a very suspicious conversation, and then she leaves and she goes back to the school. Xavier's dad then tells Xavier that he suspects that the phone that they found in his bag was a blank one that he swapped out for the real one. Xavier denies this. Simon and Maddie meet in the auto shop where they find bits of Maddie's actual phone, and then they go to the cafeteria to talk about this, and Mr. Anderson walks in. Maddie insists that Simon give the phone piece to Mr. Anderson, which he does after a bit of cajoling. Is that the right word? Yeah. At the pool, a girl named Ava nearly drowns, and Claire manages to save her. This causes Maddie to reconsider her as a suspect. If she saved Ava's life, how could she take Maddie's? As Claire is trying to save Ava's life, there's this moment where the dead kids just, watch, and they almost have this look in their face like they expect to see Ava soon as a ghost, and they almost seem sad when she doesn't die, which is interesting. Xavier then goes to Maddie's house and speaks to her mother, and he assures her that he didn't kill her, but it probably would have hurt her if she saw that text that he sent to Claire. Sandra says she probably hurt Maddie too. Yes, you did. Your teenage daughter shouldn't be your caretaker. You're a grown fucking adult. Meanwhile, Mr. Martin questions Charlie about how much Maddie remembers after her death, and then he tells him that he's proud of him. Nicole, by the way, is very unnerved by the guidance counselor hired by the school. I don't really know if this is gonna go anywhere, but a lot of emphasis is put on how spooky she is to Nicole. I don't know why that is, but whatever. We cut to the hallway where Charlie stares longingly at one of the teachers, and he suddenly sees him as a young man about his age. He then tells him he misses him, which of course goes unheard. Maddie meets Simon back in the car shop at the school where they find another piece of Maddie's phone. Soon Mr. Anderson shows up and startles them, and he acts kind of suspicious as he tells Simon to go home. So here are some of my thoughts on episode 2. The dissonant, eerie music that plays when Charlie and Maddie realize Simon can see her.
Simon?
What the fuck?
Simon, can you see me?
Well, it's just really good. His shock makes it almost creepy that this happened. Along with this music, it's almost a bit of a rejoicing moment that Simon and Maddie are suddenly less alone, but it almost makes you wonder if something is seriously wrong. There's also a bit of ADR in this first scene.
Okay. Let's go. You ready?
You could hear it a bit when Maddie is talking to Charlie at the lockers in the first episode.
I already have friends.
And if you hate it, I'll never bother you about it again.
I'm holding you to that.
Doomsday is close at hand. I'll book the marching band to please you speak. I'll feel like throwing up. You'll sit and stare like a goddamn machine. Sandra goes to Xavier's house to fuss at the sheriff, and she accuses him of calling off the search party because there's an election soon? I don't know. Simon is suddenly convinced that Mr. Anderson has something to do with Maddie's death, and Maddie insists that he's wrong. She mentions that Mr. Anderson gave her his phone number once, and as Simon goes off to class, we flash back to a conversation where Mr. Anderson tells Maddie that she's not alone and that his father was an alcoholic too.
You know, you can always come talk to me. I know how hard it was for me to continually keep my lives separate. I know how exhausting that can be.
I'm not really sure what you're talking about, but you don't know anything about me.
Maybe I do.
Okay, so you're a recovering alcoholic?
That's my father's chip.
So why do you have it?
As a reminder that even though I'm not the one with the problem, it's okay for me to take things one day at a time, too. That's my number. If you ever need somebody to talk to, day or night, you call that, okay?
Xavier is back at school, angering his father and shocking his classmates. Simon steals Mr. Anderson's keys in order to break into his car and search for evidence in it. He finds a little devil patch and the piece of Maddie's phone that Mr. Anderson said he'd give to the police. We flash back to a time when Maddie had crashed her car and she had called Mr. Anderson for help. He helped her and it really impacted her. When she tells Simon this, he gets a little frustrated because why did she never tell him this? They argue a bit and she storms off. Wally then convinces Maddie to drive the golf cart around and into a bunch of shit, I guess. I really love this character a lot. Milo, you've done an excellent job. I just love Wally. By the way, my Instagram handle is motherly with 2 L's. Anyways, they do this field day wherein the ghost kids tear shit up on the field, I guess. During this, Maddie learns a bit more about Rhonda's death, and Rhonda gets a bit choked up telling her about this, which is a bit out of character for her because she's not generally somebody who's vulnerable and open. So in this moment, it was her opening up to Maddie, which is important. Nicole, meanwhile, is still convinced that Maddie's alive, and she notices that Maddie's Facebook or Instagram or something is active. Like, she notices that I think that Maddie's Instagram account liked a picture from the view of this old elevator control room. So upon seeing this, Nicole rushes up there and flashes back to when she and Maddie went there and added to the graffiti on the walls. Back to the present, Xavier's followed Nicole. She becomes very frightened and suspicious, but he assures her that she's got nothing to worry about, and she becomes a bit more convinced of his innocence. Maddie and Simon apologize to each other in Mr. Anderson's classroom, and after perusing an old yearbook, Maddie comes to the realization that they can only communicate in rooms where people have died, and that's why they can communicate in the car shop, at the bus station, I guess, in the cafeteria, which is, I assume, where Charlie died. We cut to Nicole, Xavier, and Sandra searching the woods again, and they find some ticket, some sort of slip of paper with Maddie's boot print on it. And that's like a new piece of evidence, I guess. Meanwhile, back in Mr. Anderson's classroom, Maddie and Simon find a bunch of cash stashed away in the back of the classroom. Mr. Anderson then storms into the room and some sort of heated phone conversation. We don't know who he's on the phone with. And he says something along the lines of like, I should have never given Maddie that money. And Maddie doesn't even know what he's talking about. So my only thoughts on this episode were that field day made me have a few questions. Does this destruction and driving of golf carts affect the living realm? I assume not. So how much do the alive people see? I'd like to know what this looks like to the living people. I'm assuming nothing happens because apparently it eventually resets. I'm having a hard time understanding when or why something eventually resets. Does it reset the second the ghosts are done interacting with it? Does it reset like I don't understand, honestly. I'm really confused by that, and it's not super explained, and I guess I'm overthinking it, but it's really confusing sometimes. I'd like to plan out my partners, but you're such a narcissist. You'll probably do it next week. I don't get a choice in the matter why would I? It's only the death of me. Only the death of me. So now, Simon and Maddie are determined to figure out who Anderson was talking to, but when Maddie can't unlock his phone, Simon steals it before leaving class. Mr. Anderson will be searching for this phone for the next few episodes, and he will not find it. Charlie and Wally argue over what movie to watch for Ghost Kid movie night or something.
Baseball.
Boom, we got it. Rad Racing.
Oh, is that the one where they do the BMX bike ballet at the school dance?
Yes, it is, and it's freaking amazing.
Oh, no, it's absolutely not, though. Sorry.
Not really relevant to the overarching story here, but I think Wally's cute and I really enjoy his subplots, so I'm telling you about it so I can include it in this video. During like the student news show that Nicole and Claire host, Nicole gets kind of heated talking to her about Maddie, and Claire mentions that she and Maddie were actually friends when they were in middle school, and then she like cries, but it comes off as really performative. In the cafeteria, Simon inadvertently lets Rhonda and Wally know that he and Maddie have been able to communicate.
We need to talk. Bus stop. Now.
And the other ghosts are a little mad at her upon learning this, but then their anger shifts over to Charlie when they learn that he knew about it and told her to keep it from everyone else. They decide to keep this contained, and they don't tell the rest of the group, including Mr. Martin. By the way, Wally has a crush on Maddie, which it should be me. So there's a ghost girl that died in the auditorium. Her name's Mina, and she spends her time on the catwalks trying to like keep people safe or something. Maddie tries to ask her if she's seen Mr. Anderson do anything suspicious, and she's unresponsive. She then asks the band kids, and same deal. Hey, by the way, why do these two have their fucking hair sticking out? I understand locks to some extent. They're really hard to tuck into a helmet because they're denser, you know what I mean? But this guy can tuck his hair in, and he should. Having your hair hanging so far out of your helmet looks really unprofessional in the field. I don't care that they're dead. Like, it bothers me. You should have your hair tucked into your helmet if you can. Anyways, Nicole drags Xavier to some horror movie convention or something. She thinks Maddie's gonna be there. For some reason, she's not there because she is dead. The cops begin investigating Simon because they didn't find any money in the classroom, and they now seem to believe that he helped her make herself disappear or something. This doesn't really go anywhere, but I find it really weird. Charlie tells Maddie about Emilio, how they fell in love, to a Dave Matthews song, no less, and how he was furious with him before he died. He left an angry note in Emilio's locker, and upon his death regretted it deeply. This story is so well told, and the emotion in Charlie's face just makes it work perfectly. Like, I feel awful for him, having to watch Emilio read that letter, and not being able to do anything about it. So now Maddie tries to talk to Mina again, and she brings her flowers, and she tries to, you know, speak to her on her level and thank her for, I don't know, keeping them safe or something. I think in some way you could see it as manipulative, but I think it was just giving Mina exactly what she wanted, which was a thank you for doing what she thinks is keeping people safe. And I don't really think Mina is bad. She's as lost as the rest of them, honestly. This causes Mina to tell Maddie that she actually did see Anderson hide the old band uniform patches and a receipt for some band uniforms. One of these patches was in Mr. Anderson's car, interestingly.
Did Mr. Anderson even pay this? I might have found something that can help. Maybe keep the cops off your back.
I know, but I have something you need to see. This is one of our new band uniforms. The ones the boosters all raised money for last summer. Mr. Anderson kindly offered to order them himself. Only problem is the uniforms he purchased aren't new. They were retired and stowed away for decades.
Simon, I have no idea what you're talking about.
So you didn't find these, spruce them up, and pay yourself that money?
What? No, I absolutely did not.
Then how do you explain this receipt? The company doesn't even exist. And as for our mascot, Mr. Anderson used it to cover up all traces of the old one.
Soon after this, Rhonda goes to Mr. Martin to tell him that she'd like to cross over very soon.
I've been here for 60 years. 60 graduations. I've watched class after class hug and cry and throw their stupid little cardboard caps in the air and go. I made my peace with it because nothing changes. But now, I know I'm not always a joiner, but I gotta get out of here. So whatever you did to help Janet, I want in.
Dawn tells Maddie that she knows all the phone passcodes because Dawn has a habit of snooping through all the students' bags and stuff. And so Maddie and Simon are now able to unlock Anderson's phone and call the number he called that night. The person he was calling was Claire. So for my thoughts, I had to wonder if Mina was really keeping people safe up there. Like, what does Mina think she's doing? Is she like the band kids, where she has no sense that she's really dead? I'm not sure. It's at this point I'll have to bring up the elephant in the room. This is like if 13 Reasons Why was done well, right. Like with Rhonda's story, if they did a similar storyline in 13 Reasons Why, they would have shown like a graphic assault scene, which would have been completely unnecessary because the painful and choked up way Rhonda tells the story has all the impact we need. We see how it affected her, and that's what's more important. It's not seeing the deaths, it's seeing how they feel about it. I really love the way Wally stands in order to be in frame with the other characters. This episode really made Nicole's belief that Maddie's still alive like sadder and sadder. Like, it's so sad to see her just completely convince herself that she was going to find Maddie at that like horror movie festival or something. The way Charlie tells the story about Emilio is so sad. I mean, I understand why he was mad at him for outing him to his parents. It's also just heartbreaking because in the larger scheme of things, he didn't even care anymore. It didn't even matter in the face of death. I like Charlie a lot, and he didn't deserve this. He deserved to have a life. He deserved to know Emilio for more than those few weeks or something that they knew each other. And the fact that he couldn't and he never will is just, it's heartbreaking. I'm a little confused about the money in Mr. Anderson's classroom. What was it? Where did it go? Was that the band uniform money? Did he know that that they found it and he moved it before the cops could find it? I know there's a light on my face. I'm not changing it. I think it adds to the mood. And even if it doesn't, I'm not doing anything about it. So you're just gonna have to deal with the fact that there's little green stars on my wall, okay? And on my face, and on my mouth. And now on my jacket. I also found myself wondering what would happen if Maddie tried to touch a living person. Simon says that he can't hug Maddie.
I can't hug you, but my sweater can.
Has he tried? Like, they never really explain that, and I'd like to see them try to interact with people. They never do because the show is not really interested in trying to show any fancy special effects of like people's hands going through someone or like people walking through each other like Harry Potter ghosts. And I get that that's like, I guess that was probably a creative choice, but it really makes me wonder like if the spirits and the real people can collide in any way because they haven't shown it.
Pull the plug, but be careful. I don't wanna die too soon. I think there's good in you somewhere. I'll hang on till the chaos is through.
So the homecoming game is happening in this episode, and Wally is pumped up, and I love it for him. Maddie tells Simon about how she and Claire stopped being friends. Basically, when they were kids, Maddie was already so overwhelmed by her horrible mother, and when Claire had some issues with her dad or something and needed a place to go, Maddie had to close the door on her, and they never spoke to each other after that. Upon learning that Maddie's backpack was found, Sandra is elated, and she has hope, basically, that Maddie's still alive. The thing is, she's a shit mother, and I don't care. Maddie sees this hope in Sandra and almost wants her mother to be able to keep looking for her, and she tells Simon maybe they should put the investigation on hold so that Sandra can live a normal life, I guess, looking for her. I think this was a very short-sighted decision of Maddie, but she's only like 17 or 18, so like, can you blame her, really? Claire confronts Mr. Anderson at his house, and she asks him what he told the cops, and he basically says this.
I told him the truth. That I took that money to pay off my dad's debt. And that's where I was the night Maddie disappeared with my father.
Did you say anything about me?
You know what? I don't remember.
Wally's mother is still being crazy at the football games after all these years, and Wally actually tells Maddie that he only did football for his mom. He didn't love it, he was just really good at it, and he wanted to make her happy. Maddie tells him he's dead now, he can do what he wants, he doesn't have to do what she wanted anymore.
You can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, but I don't know if I know how to do that.
There's this really, sad scene where Wally decides he needs to let go of trying to make his mom happy even when he's dead. Did I cry? Yes. An anonymous person sends Nicole, Simon, and Xavier a video of Claire and Mr. Anderson talking about money or something, I think. This is a bit of a breakthrough in the case. When Maddie and Wally are talking, he says this.
Maybe my mom holding on to the hope that I might come back someday is enough to keep her going.
But you're not. You're not coming back.
And this prompts her to tell Simon that they have to find out who killed her. Sandra shouldn't cling to false hope, and that's not fair to her. I don't really care what's fair to Sandra, but she does deserve to know that Maddie's dead. Simon gets Xavier to ask Claire to homecoming, because she's our main suspect at this point after seeing that video, and they want him to get information out of her at the homecoming dance. And then Wally asks Maddie to homecoming, but it should have been me. Anyways, at the end of this episode, Maddie and Simon find a fallout shelter that's connected to the boiler room and realize that if they can talk in there, it means somebody must have died there, possibly Maddie. So there's a bit at the beginning of this episode where Charlie says something along the lines of like, is this a microaggression or full-on macro or something?
All right, who's next? Charlie? You want to ride the pony?
Oh, okay, so would that be a microaggression or is it just full-on macro?
I don't know what those things mean.
The thing is, although he was long dead before those terms really became in popular use, I can believe that he picked up some Gen Z slang, and the way that Mr. Martin just says, I don't know what those words mean, successfully undercuts the cringe for me, so I am gonna let that one slide because I think it was funny. With this banner that the ghost kids paint, how long will it last? Do the things the ghosts interact with only last as long as they're still interacting with them? Like when they're done painting and hang it up, how long does it stay up? Because they're not interacting with it anymore. I don't I don't fully get that. When is it gonna come down? How does it know when to reset? You know? Like how do they clearly that these are not ghost paints and paper, like it's real things that they're interacting with. I don't get that. Whatever. Maddie's mom suddenly sobering up feels like too little and too late. Like it took Maddie disappearing for you to pull your shit together. You weren't looking into her face every day and seeing that she needed a fucking mom. I understand losing your husband and alcoholism is not something that you just snap out of. But Maddie's mother isn't just a fucking individual with only herself to hurt. She has a daughter. When your alcoholism gets to the point where your daughter is becoming your caretaker at probably before age 17, but at some point in her teen years, that's not fair. That's not fair, and it's your job as a mother to step up and get some fucking help. I hope I don't come off as classist or insensitive. I'll be the first to admit that it isn't something I have firsthand experience with. And if you disagree, feel free to let me know. I just think that you should be a mother to your daughter while she's still in high school and not make her have to become your caretaker and protect her. It's not fair, and she didn't ask for that. I understand that not everybody can afford rehab or whatever, but it is not fair that Maddie has to be her mother's caretaker. She's a teenager. She deserves to be a teenager. That's not fair. This Claire girl is really beautiful, and while we're talking about Claire, I really enjoyed this more subtle depiction of clique culture in high school. It doesn't feel like fucking Glee. Your high school drama about a murder mystery shouldn't feel like Glee. Glee is insane. I like Glee, but oh my god. Time and place. Mr. Martin and his insistence that they focus on moving forward is interesting. I get that depicting him with a bit of urgency is important to push the story forward, but like there's no time limit for the ghosts to move on. You have literally all of the time in the world to do that. I don't get the urgency.
Doomsday is close at hand. I'll book the marching band to play as you speak. I'll feel like throwing up. You'll sit and stare like a goddamn machine.
It's time for the homecoming dance.
You waited to be dead to go to a school dance with a jock.
Clearly Simon has never heard about the introverted weird girl ex-jock romance trope, of which I am a fan. I loved She's All That.
Can ghosts have sex? I said we can swell, didn't I?
Oh. So you've all...
La Grande Mort is no competition for La Petite Mort, Tootsie Roll.
Now we know that ghosts can have sex. Thanks for letting us know, Rhonda. Cool. Charlie has written a note for Emilio. He wants Maddie to give it to Simon to give to Mr. Figueroa, or like to copy it down. You know what I mean? Wait, how can Maddie give Simon a note that... Wait, hold on, sorry. How can Maddie give Simon a note to copy down? Like, how can Simon see it? I guess Maddie can hold it up. I don't get that. Because Charlie wrote it. If Charlie holds something up and then Simon can't see it, but then he hands it over to Maddie and suddenly Simon can see it, how does that work? This wasn't meant to be thought into that much. I suddenly have thoughts. Anyway, she gives him a note that Charlie wrote so he can write it down so it's an actual physical note to give to Mr. Figueroa. Basically just to apologize for the letter from when they were kids and to tell him he didn't mean it. Wally gets Maddie a little paper corsage. It's so cute. It's so sweet. I love it. He's so nervous.
Your football number?
Yeah. Oh, shit. You hate this, don't you? I'm sorry.
No.
I'm embarrassed. No, this is so stupid. It's so stupid. It's just something we used to do back in the 80s. It's a thing.
Wally,
you as a football player, you
it's
get
sweet.
it. Yeah. It was hard to find flowers, so I had to use paper, as you can see. So stay away from an open flame. Cool? All right.
He also does a little song and dance, just how we would expect from Mr. Zombie's musical to do. Hey, I just realized he plays a singing dead jock in both of the things I've talked about with him in it. Anyways, Maddie's kind of a bad date to Wally. She's distracted by watching Claire and Xavier, and it's kind of rude. I mean, I get why she's doing it. She's got a mission, but he asked her to be his date, and she's just not even talking to him. So Simon gives Mr. Figueroa the note.
Isn't your first name Emilio?
Yep.
I think I found something that belongs to you, maybe. I was in the library yesterday. I found this tucked into an old copy of the things they carried.
And yes, I did cry while watching him read it. Claire finds out that the video of her talking to Mr. Anderson got out and explains what happened. Claire explains it better than I could.
I figured out Mr. Anderson was stealing.
Okay, and I saw an opportunity and I took it. Okay, people do this shit every day.
I told Mr. Anderson that if he gave me an A, I wouldn't say anything about the money.
What about Maddie's phone? Why'd you swap it? What'd you do with the real one?
We thought Maddie took the video, and I just wanted to delete it. But I couldn't unlock it, so I gave it to Mr. Anderson. Okay, he was the one that got rid of it.
You better not be lying to me.
I told him to pay her off. To give her the money, whatever she wanted. But that is all I did.
By the way, in this clip, I have captions on. In the captions, Claire says that she heard that Mr. Anderson was dealing. I don't think that that's what she's saying. I think she's saying Mr. Anderson was stealing, because what is he dealing? I think she said stealing, like stealing money from the people who raise money for the band uniforms. Xavier believes Claire didn't do it after hearing her explain this, and he tells Simon as much. Meanwhile, Sandra called Nicole because she thought somebody was breaking into her house, and so she needed some help. This is when the sheriff comes by, not called upon, he just shows up, and he says that they believe that they found the murder weapon. This is revealed to the audience to be linked to the janitor that we've seen every so often, Mr. South. Whether or not it is a weapon that Mr. South used is up to debate, because the way that they connect it to him is that he was the only person who would have had access to it in that area, I guess. I think almost anybody could have, though. That seems kind of flimsy to me, and that's acknowledged within the show. It's a bit flimsy, but they need somebody to blame. Maddie goes to Wally to apologize, and they kiss. Don't say it, 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 don't say it. It should have been. So Rhonda goes peeking around in the fallout shelter, and we don't really see what she finds, but interesting that she's doing that without telling anybody else. And then Sandra reads some essay that Maddie wrote that Mr. Anderson had graded, if you remember. That was her last essay. And she starts drinking again because she doesn't have a daughter to fail anymore. And again, I hope I don't come off as insensitive, because I understand alcoholism is difficult. I understand that it's not something you can just snap out of. I understand that being an addict is it's not easy. And I understand that it's not necessarily something that she can help, I guess. But when you are a parent, it's your responsibility to make sure you take care of your child. And Sandra failed her. And she's not just an individual with only herself to hurt. Like I said, she has a child, and it's not fair to do that to your child. Meanwhile, Nicole is burying something in the woods. What'd she bury? I don't know.
Did you die a virgin?
Oh, hello. I just wanted to come and check in and make sure that, with everything going on, finding out that you may have possibly been dragged through a murder tunnel and all that, I wanted to see if you were still up to go to the...
To go to the dance? Yeah.
Okay, you are.
You're not going to this one alone, Wally.
That's awesome, and I'll...
Wally is so cute. I love him. I feel like this show has done a really good job with platonic relationships between the opposite gender. That feels like an uncommon thing for teen shows especially to be able to do really well. So to do it so well here, I'm just really happy about. I really like it. The way Claire finds out that Xavier was up to something and was trying to record her to get information out of her at the homecoming dance was because she saw the brightness on his phone while they were kissing or something. Why is your phone on full brightness, idiot? My phone has never been on full brightness. I cannot think of a situation where I would put my phone on full brightness. What's wrong with you? It's too bright as it is on lowest brightness. By the way, I don't know what this is in reference to. I said something along the lines of, Milo, please, you're making this so difficult. This being my delusions. And I would like to take this moment to clarify that I'm not feeding into any weird parasocial stalker tendencies. I don't follow the guy on socials, and I won't pretend like I know anything about him beyond the fictional characters he's played. I genuinely think that it is weird to pretend like you know a celebrity because you don't. And although I think he's cute, I don't know him. Famous people are not our friends, no matter how much we try to know them through their social media or their acting or whatever their public appearances are. I think that this actor is cute, and I will joke about having a crush on him, but I want you to know that harassing public figures concerning their personal lives, sexualities, or romantic lives between themselves and other public figures is weird, and I don't condone it, whatever your motivations might be. Although I'll joke about telling Milo to call me or whatever, I need you to understand that this is a public figure and I don't know him, and he's not obligated to respond to me. I'm not entitled to a response from any public figure or any celebrity, and you are not entitled to any information about any public figure that is none of your fucking business. If you think two actors in a TV show are cute and should date, that's not their fucking problem. That's not their problem. If you think that two cast members on Smosh should date or are dating, it's not your business whether they are or aren't. If you think Taylor Swift is a lesbian and secretly dating Carly Kloss, it is not your business whether she is or isn't. If you think two members from One Direction were or are still dating, it's none of your business whether they are or are not, or whether they're gay or straight or bisexual. It's none of your fucking business. It's none of my business whether Milo intends on responding to this video or speaking to me at all, because I'm nobody. It's none of you are not entitled to the personal lives or information or contact from public figures or celebrities. And I need to just, I know I make a lot of jokes about that, but I want to make my stance clear. Celebrities don't owe you shit in terms of information about their private lives. Okay?
I'd like to pet at my partners, but you're such a narcissist. You'll probably do it next week. I don't get chasing no matter why would I? It's so the death of me.
So Sandra is still drinking. Meanwhile, Nicole sets a bunch of pictures of Maddie from her portfolio on fire. It's unclear why she does this. Anyways, Rhonda, Charlie, and Wally try to jog Maddie's memory by using music and food she ate to try to help her remember what happened that day. They suggest hypnosis, but Dawn says it's too risky. She suggests an anti-seance instead. Nicole, Simon, Xavier, and Claire don't think that the janitor did it and discuss about whether they can exonerate Mr. South. Nicole's being kind of weird though. Meanwhile, Simon seems to intentionally bomb his interview with a representative from Northwestern. Right now it's unclear why.
What are you passionate about? What's your proudest achievement of the last year?
Not sure I have one.
Excuse me? You read Crime and Punishment in a weekend. You wrote a fan letter to Guillermo del Toro and he wrote you back. You co-created a podcast and interviewed the dude who designed Freddy Krueger's face.
What's your favorite subject?
I like a little bit of everything.
What are you doing?
Claire, meanwhile, bashes her car windows in with a baseball bat so that she can file a police report and force the investigators to move on from Mr. South. Simon tells Maddie that he thinks Nicole is being suspicious.
Can we talk about Nicole and the weird secret she might be keeping? She's acting really strange.
Yeah, it's called grief.
Or guilt. Or resentment toward the both of us.
Well, you said the final chapter was the best Friday the 13th.
You hate scary movies, just own it.
It's not true. I like Scream.
It's scary satire, it doesn't count.
And you closed your eyes the second the movie started.
No, I didn't.
You spent half of the movie looking for that Twizzler you dropped on the ground.
And you don't even like black licorice, that's Maddie's thing.
Okay, well, Maddie didn't invent black licorice.
No, but she gets a spider ring. Do you get a spider ring?
And you hate spiders.
Not if the legs don't move.
You don't need to cop Maddie's style.
Simon, stop.
I'm not.
He's right, though. Just own it. It's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
You think I'm owning you too?
In a bad way.
Is there a good way? Fuck you guys.
Mr. Martin speaks to Rhonda and appears to get very heated about Maddie's behavior, you know, trying to solve the mystery or whatever.
I care for Maddie too, but it's my job to keep her balanced. She's been here for weeks. She doesn't even have 1 foot firmly planted in the afterlife.
He really wants her to move on, for some reason. Maddie and the others try to do a seance, but they only succeed in bringing up Dawn's trauma about her own death, and then they stop. Hey, before I show this clip, I am going to show like a clip where Dawn talks about how she died, and I'm going to kind of cut it up so it's just brief so you can kind of understand the context, because I am going to briefly mention it and what happened, sort of, and I feel like it's important that you know the context of what I'm talking about. But if you don't want to watch it, skip ahead to this timestamp that's on the screen. It's not really that graphic, but it has a few flashing lights, and it's a little bit upsetting. And, I mean, it doesn't really show how she died. They don't really speak about it in, like, a lot of detail, as I've said about this whole show. But it's got flashing lights, and it's really sad. So, if you don't want to see it, again, skip to this timestamp. Thank you.
My friends Beth and Karen are late. The three of us are doing a project for social studies. And I hear Beth and Karen. They come in laughing, making jokes about some flaky, spaced-out bimbo. And then I realize they're talking about me. And it just gets worse and worse. And then they turn and look my way. And I don't want them to see me. So I reach towards the light bulb to unscrew it and...
Simon, Xavier, and Claire find out that Nicole was the one who took that video that they were all sent of Claire and Mr. Anderson arguing, and they begin to wonder why and what her involvement is with this whole thing. Simon then tells Maddie that they found this information out, and he also tells her why he doesn't really care about Northwestern anymore. Simon confronts Nicole about the video, and he presses her to admit that she was blackmailing Mr. Anderson. She admits that she wanted the money from the blackmail to move to Chicago to be near Maddie and Simon because the admissions counselor she spoke to said she had no chance of getting a scholarship to the colleges she wanted to go to.
Why don't you tell Maddie and I about that portfolio review?
Give you more reasons to think I'm pathetic? No thanks.
Meanwhile, Sandra hides something in Maddie's room. We don't quite know what. Maddie apologizes to Dawn and tells her she didn't deserve what happened to her when she died.
If anything, you deserve an apology. You know, I'm sorry if anyone ever made you feel like a joke. Because you're not. You're gonna be okay. You're a good friend.
This causes Dawn to cross over, I guess, as someone was finally kind and genuinely nice to her. Nicole and Simon go out into the woods just beyond the school property to dig up the money that she buried at the end of the last episode. A hooded figure creeps up behind them as Maddie watches from behind the fence, and she suddenly has a flashback to an argument she had with her mother just before she died, leading her to believe that her mother may have killed her. I do have to wonder at this point if there are ghosts in other places. Is this school special? Do the ghosts just have zones? If the school was expanded, would they be able to go to the newer sections that were previously out of bounds? Can the spirits only communicate with the spirits that died in their zone? I assume so. I guess they've never been able to try because they've never gone beyond the school grounds. It was at this point that I was beginning to distrust Mr. Martin. Why is he in such a rush to make Maddie accept her death? There's no time limit to any of this. Wouldn't finding out how she died help her accept her death sooner? I find his behavior strange. With this scene where he's talking to Maddie and he's like, I don't even think I care about going to college anymore because I don't want to leave you behind here. It's so sad because how can you even find time to mourn someone you're speaking to? How can you think about moving on when she's still talking to you? This show has built up to every emotional scene so perfectly. Every single time a character cries, they've built up to it so well that I'm crying too. And it's a bit because I cry easily at TV shows, never made it to the end of Scrubs or Community without crying, but also it's like impressive. I've known these characters for barely 7 episodes and I'm so invested in them.
Doomsday is close at hand. I booked the marching band to play as you speak. I I feel like throwing up, you'll sit and stare like a goddamn machine.
Simon finds Maddie's necklace hidden in Maddie's room. This is what we saw Sandra hide in Maddie's room in the last episode. Now the question is, why did she have it? At another group ghost person session, I guess, Mr. Martin has an outburst, and then we learn a little bit more lore about him and why he's been so insistent on letting go of the past. He let a fire happen when his back was turned. His class survived, but he died.
What would you do if the one person who was supposed to protect you was the one who hurt you? Like the person whose only job is to keep you safe. I feel like for the first time in this whole ordeal, I'm scared of the truth.
I got you.
Do I have to even say it at this point? Wally, Charlie, and Rhonda are a little confused as to why Janet's crossing over was so different from Dawn's, because they didn't see the lights flicker when Janet crossed over. So they're confused. So they go and they do a little bit of research on her, and then they realize that Janet too died in the classroom fire with Mr. Martin. Why did they lie? Simon, meanwhile, has convinced Sandra to accept some award on Maddie's behalf in an attempt to get her to say what really happened the day that Maddie died. Simon sits with her in a classroom and tries to, quote, help her figure out what she's going to say, and after some pushing and prying, the truth comes out. Sandra came to school on that day to tell Maddie that she blew all of the college money Maddie's dad left behind for her on some cabin up north.
This guy that I was in treatment with, Alex, he told me about these great cabins up north, and it's this new development, and they're going for a really great deal, and so I bought us one. It's impossible. We don't have any money. We had to borrow enough to put you into rehab.
But I used the money that we put away when your dad died.
But it's for us, for our future, so we can start over. That was my college fund.
No one has taken care of me since Dad died. You can't even take care of yourself, Mom. That money was for me. From Dad. It wasn't yours to spend. It's like every day you wake up and you find a new way to hurt me.
They argue in the boiler room. She rips off her necklace and tells her to get out and leave her alone. Sandra leaves. Maddie is left crying on the floor of the boiler room. Sandra didn't kill her.
She killed my spirit.
Xavier, Claire, and Nicole explore a house on that same street where a bunch of houses have been broken into, and soon enough, that same hooded figure breaks in. As they follow the figure out of the house, the figure hops into Xavier's truck, reverses over him. He suffers some sort of head injury. We could see blood on his head. I don't quite know what happens here. Like, he seems to pass out. I don't think he's dead, but it's strange. Charlie and Wally begin exploring the fallout shelter more, and they find Mr. Martin's notebooks where he, studies the dead students like lab rats. All of them except for Janet, strangely enough. They also find a newspaper clipping that reveals that he was the one who started the fire, not a student.
Grieving parents of Split River sophomore Janet Hamilton demand administration be held accountable for daughter's death after surviving students say fire was started at the hands of her late educator, Mr. Everett Martin.
Then Rhonda appears, and she reveals that she was aware of some of this and shows them a stash full of the dead kids' belongings. The door suddenly shuts, and they're locked in. Simon finds Maddie in the auditorium, and she tells him that she wrote her obituary finally. She reads it to him and tells him that he's the only person that she can count on. Simon tells her... It's hard to explain. I'm going to insert the clip here.
What is that?
That's the person who's been breaking into houses across town. It's who attacked Xavier tonight. I don't know if this is real, Maddie. Maybe you're just some fucked up coping mechanism that I created to put off the pain of losing you. But you're alive. Out there. And I lost my mind.
No.
Simon then leaves, and as Maddie tries to follow Simon off the school grounds, she's brought back into the boiler room and hears Charlie, Rhonda, and Wally yelling for help in the fallout shelter. She suddenly remembers what happened after Sandra left the boiler room. She heard a girl's voice pleading for help in the shelter and nervously approached. She saw Mr. Martin speaking sternly to Janet.
Tell me you have.
Be careful.
Don't move, Janet! No!
Who runs toward Maddie, knocking her into the air like a big gust of wind. I believe we're to understand here that this is when Janet's spirit took over Maddie's body. As her spirit died only moments before, as Maddie said. Back to the present, as she attempts to free her friends, they tell her not to trust Mr. Martin. She turns around to see him at the top of the stairs, ominously staring down back at her. We cut to Janet in that hooded jacket and Maddie's body as she buys a bus ticket with the stolen bills. She steps on a bus headed to Detroit, and the show ends. Alright, here's what I think happened. So, earlier, Dawn mentioned how hypnotism is dangerous because if you let your soul leave your body, another spirit could wander in and take over.
It's like you have a vacancy sign above your head. Your body becomes an empty shell. Another spirit could walk in and stay there.
Did you get any of that? Maddie, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think we should be listening to someone who cuts her hair with a steak knife.
Do you find the cilantro on her chin cute too?
Which I have to wonder what this has to do with the ghosts, because they don't have bodies, they're ghosts. But okay. Although Maddie was not hypnotized in her last moments, when her mother recounts their last argument, Maddie says that her spirit died that day.
She killed my spirit.
I think that this was the story's way of telling the audience that Maddie's spirit was barely hanging on by a thread, and Janet was able to run straight into her and knock her spirit right out of her body. What questions do we still need answers to? Why is there blood in the boiler room? It's clearly Maddie's, but if there was no physical attack that ended her life, why is there blood? Is Mr. Martin not actually dead? Why did he start that fire? Why did he and Janet lie? How did Maddie see both Mr. Martin and Janet when she wasn't dead? What were they talking about in the fallout shelter? What does Mr. Martin have to do with the other teenagers' deaths, if anything? Why is he studying them? Is Mr. Martin able to impact the real world, and is that why the door didn't reset, locking Wally, Charlie, and Rhonda in? What threat does Mr. Martin pose to the teenagers? Is he able to hurt them? How are Simon and Maddie able to communicate? That's never really explained. I mean, she says something that she thinks explains it, but I'm not buying that. Here are some theories I have to maybe answer some of those questions. The blood in the boiler room, I think the best explanation that I could think of for why that blood from Maddie's physical body was found on the walls after Janet possessed her. Mr. Martin must have taken a crowbar and attempted to kill her. He clearly doesn't want whatever she knows to leave the school grounds. If he's dead though, what consequences could he fear for if Janet does tell the truth? I'm confused on what the stakes are for him. And I guess that's a mystery for season 2. On that, why would Mr. Martin be able to physically attack Janet if he's dead too? I don't think he lied about being dead, because if he were, he would have had to fabricate that newspaper that Wally found, and if he did do that, would he not write it to make sure that it aligns with his own story that he's been telling them? It's possible that he's not the real Everett Martin, as souls can switch between bodies, I guess, but that would beg the question of why Janet would lie, as she would have had to know the real Mr. Martin and what he would have looked like, and so she would have had to lie to the other ghost kids. It would also beg the question of his real identity, and I feel like that's a bit too complicated, but he's hiding so much already. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. Wally and Charlie mentioned that Mr. Martin has, quote, some sort of weird connection with the fallout shelter.
Including all the objects we had with us when we died.
I'm gonna throw up. Are we sure it's him?
Who else knows everything about us? Who have we sat with for decades, bearing our souls to? Who else has some deep secret connection to this stupid fallout shelter?
And I'm wondering if the fallout shelter has some sort of strange supernatural property to it that makes ghosts tangible to the living world. If it is the fallout shelter, though, that doesn't explain how he could have attacked a living person in the boiler room, which is most definitely not a place where ghosts can be seen, as Mr. South doesn't see Maddie when she and Simon are down there. I really don't have another explanation for the blood, though. The other explanation for how Maddie saw them is that her soul had become so detached that she was almost in both the living and dead world at once, and therefore was able to be a physical living person and a ghost at the same time. I know Maddie said that the reason she and Simon could communicate was because he was the only person in her life that has never asked anything of her, but I don't think that makes too much sense. I think that the reason they can communicate is because she said thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Maddie.
I don't think that any of the other dead kids had anything or anyone to be thankful for after they died. I think Mr. Martin has some sort of deep, dark secret concerning Janet, and that's why he set that fire that killed the both of them. That's why they both lied to the other dead kids. That's why they were arguing in the fallout shelter. I don't know why Janet was pleading for help in the fallout shelter, or why Mr. Martin was yelling at Janet to tell him what she felt.
How did you feel? You have to tell me. You have to.
My best guess is that she felt Maddie's spirit coming loose from her physical body and Mr. Martin found out, or he's demanding answers on how she felt as she died in his little scientific notebooks, or Janet also managed to communicate with a real person and made the mistake of telling Mr. Martin. I wrote the little scientific notebooks part, and then I just now, as I read that, remembered, no, there was nothing about her in those notebooks. He wasn't studying her. Or he hid that. He destroyed it. Or Janet took it with her somehow. And as for her feeling Maddie's spirit coming loose from her body, I don't think that makes sense because they would have had to already be in the fallout shelter, at least for like a bit, you know, before Maddie had even had that argument with her mother. So I don't think that they would have, I don't think timeline-wise that makes sense because I feel like all of that happened so fast. So I don't think it's that. But I don't know what else they could be arguing about. And I guess that's a mystery for season 2. Speaking of season 2, I think season 2 will elaborate a little bit more on Wally and Maddie's relationship, and Maddie will be torn between her dead friends and the possibility of being alive again, seeing as her body isn't dead. She just left it. But then it'll be torn between, like, do I want to be with my friends in the living world and have a life, or do I want to be with the people I've already made friends with in the dead world? I feel like that comes with a lot of different sad goodbyes either way. So that's interesting, and I'm sure that that's going to be one of the conflicts. I think that Maddie and the ghosts may actually try to find a way that they can all live again, but ultimately I think that they'll stay dead and let Janet be Maddie, because Janet's story seems more sad than malicious. I'm actually hoping that the show doesn't go past 3 or 4 seasons. I hope the creators have an end in mind, because some shows only need to exist to tell their story and then go, and that's okay. We don't need shows to just go on forever. It's okay to just tell a story and then just let it end. Now, before I end the video, I do have more thoughts on the show in terms of storytelling, dialogue, direction, etc. I wish I had negative things to say, but I can't think of much criticism, honestly. It's such a new show that there's not much to criticize in terms of its storytelling yet, because, like, it's not done telling its story. And I'm not holding any of its other, like, flaws or plot holes against it because I don't know if they're going to be answered. So I couldn't tell you any criticisms I have so far because I was really happy with it. Honestly, I really like it so far. Something School Spirits does really well, in my opinion, is the way it handles violence and death. A large portion of the principal cast has died, and the manner in which they died was all pretty unpleasant, as many teenage deaths unfortunately are. I think a worse show 13 Reasons Why, would just outright show the audience these scenes in the most shocking way possible, in order to attempt to make an impact on the viewer's mind, or worse, in the name of spreading awareness. School Spirits doesn't really rely on this to be interesting, and instead, all of the death scenes are only told to us by the characters, like I said before. When Rhonda, Charlie, and Wally tell Maddie the audience about how they died, there is no flashback to the moment. There may be flashbacks to the surrounding events, but not to that very moment. I think that this is a really good choice for a number of reasons. One, it allows the actors to shine. This show has a great cast, and I think that this is most evident during these scenes, and I think that this really helps the audience to empathize with the characters. On that, reason 2 is the fact that the story of each of their deaths is only told from their perspective, with only their facial expressions as they speak as a visual. The focus shifts less on the gruesome nature of their deaths and more on how they feel about it. It's not important, really, to see Charlie die from anaphylactic shock, but I do think it's important for us as the audience to know how he feels about the people he left behind. It's not important to see Rhonda get murdered by her guidance counselor, but it is important to see her face as she becomes uncharacteristically vulnerable while she talks about it. It's important because she opens up to Maddie in that moment. And for Wally's death, it really only matters that we know he died on the field. The fact that he doesn't seem all that choked up about it makes me wonder how happy he was to be alive, or if he was so broken up about it that he has to put a lot of emotional distance between himself and his own death to even speak about it. And that makes me think more about his own thoughts and his own feelings rather than, oh God, how awful it is to die during a football game. Because obviously it's awful. I don't need to see that because that's really uncomfortable and gruesome and unnecessarily so, honestly. Reason 3, it means the show is just that much less difficult to watch. Putting so much emphasis on the mental state and emotions of the characters as they died means that it's so much less important that we see unpleasant death scenes. It proves that it is not necessary to show horrific graphic violence for the audience to be impacted and empathize with the characters. You don't need to show that for me to know that it was bad. Although I think that there is a time and place for showing violence in something, this is not really it. I don't think that it matters to see them die. I don't really care to see them die. This show's pacing is excellent, as I've said. Every episode lays out its information in a way that both contributes to the overarching story, as well as having its own little story that's resolved by the end of the episode. This makes the show really fun to watch and easy to follow, while also keeping you curious about the mystery of Maddie's death. The ending is great not only because it solves the mystery of her death, but also gives us a ton more questions that aren't answered, so we're looking forward to seeing season 2 without feeling like we got cheated out of answers to questions we already had. I really loved the music. I think that each song that's played that's not like original score or whatever, it really adds to the cohesive feel of the overall soundtrack while also setting a very distinct mood for every scene that a new song plays in. I don't really have thoughts beyond that, I just think that the music is really good. I like the cast a lot. I don't think that there's a single weak link here except for maybe Xavier. Like, he's not bad. There's just, I can't tell if he's just kind of weird or if he just gives a kind of weird bad line delivery every now and then, but he says some of his lines in a way that I don't really understand why he said it that way.
Well, that seems highly unlikely, as I am legitimately afraid of heights. Seriously, if anyone has vertigo here, it's me. It's like hard for me to even be standing up here right now.
Overall, though, I don't really think any of the cast members did a bad job. In fact, I think that they all did a really good job. Xavier's flaws are barely noticeable, and my criticisms of his acting are totally nitpicks and not really a big deal at all, and in fact could have been an acting decision on his part and not like a flaw, so that's okay. All of the characters have really good chemistry with one another, and each pairing of any character is a really interesting dynamic, which is what you want in an ensemble cast like this. You want to be able to pair individual characters no matter who it is and get an interesting scene out of it, and I like that. I feel like I should have something negative to say too, as no TV show is perfect. I do have a few little things, I guess. I don't like that the Mr. Martin thing is so confusing. I wish we understood a bit more about why he's so threatening, because right now I'm still not sure what his motivations are or what threat he even poses to the dead kids. They're dead. What can he do to them? I wish that Janet was mentioned a bit more, maybe something about her personality that could hint as to what she and Mr. Martin were arguing about. I just wish there was a little bit more information for me to sink my MatPat teeth into, but I don't know, maybe there is and I missed it. I could just not have been paying close enough attention. I still don't quite understand where the money came from that Maddie had. As far as I do understand, for whatever reason, Maddie had gotten a hold of a bunch of money in cash and it was in her bag. But also Nicole had the money and tried to take it for herself to move to Chicago. That bit really confuses me, but it's entirely possible I wasn't paying enough attention. Was it the money in Mr. Anderson's classroom? Where did it go after Maddie and Simon saw it? Did Janet as Maddie take it? Did Nicole take it? Did Mr. Anderson move it? When did it get into Maddie's backpack? When did Nicole get the money? Where did she find it? Was it... I don't understand. On that, I probably wasn't paying enough attention to the money plotline because I find stories about money and blackmail or whatever really boring. That's not the show's fault. You can't expect a show to bend to all of your tastes or expectations, but I did find it really uninteresting. Genuinely though, this is one of the best, newest shows I've seen in a while, and I hope it gets enough seasons for its story to be completed. The cast and writers did a really great job, and I can't praise it enough. Part of me hopes nobody else talks about it because if a bunch of people watch it and all decide they hate it, it'll kind of hurt my feelings. I worry that other people are going to talk about it and then have negative things to say that I didn't say, and then I'm gonna look stupid. That's about all I have to say about School Spirit Season 1 though. If you made it this far, thank you. I'm sure this video is, I don't know, pretty long, and I'm not really the most polished of video makers or editors. I've been pulling clothes out of my closet and I dug up my leather jacket, so I've got dust up my nose, and now I sound like I've got a cold. So I'm gonna end the video here, and hopefully the audio doesn't sound annoying and my voice doesn't sound too annoying. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little outfits. I'll see you in the next one.
I'd have liked to plan out my part in this, but you're such a narcissist that you did it on Halloween. I had no choice in the matter. Why would I? It's only the death of